Hey, how y'all doing? Okay, let's do it to it. Okay, we're going to go to our studies. A5, knight f3, knight c6, b4. This is the Roy Lopez. A6, retreats back, knight f. There's a Roy Lopez if you take. Bobby played that in a little bit, but it's more of a positional game at that point because I'll show you. If at this point you take this. This pawn chain is really not good for black. And so what White's gonna do is they're looking at the end game because White's pawn chain is better. And so what will eventually happen is White will get a majority potentially on the queen side or king side, and that's how kind of that works. But the majority of the time they retreat back to a4. So white castles, d6. There's also this move here, and then more likely c3 would be played at this point, because then if this, you retreat your bishop back to c, and then you try getting this type of a move in. If castles, you can play d3, and then if now here, bishop e3, and then if the bishop comes out, fianchetto's there, you now could play d4. It takes, oops, not c4. That was a mistake on my part. Takes there, and then if all the trades come off, they'd be down, so that they can't do that. So after takes and then takes, the bishop has to retreat back, and now you have some superiority of a majority on the king side here, and that's the idea. You develop around this, and if there, you can actually potentially develop here or develop there. I'd probably more likely maybe I'd develop down here, and then the knight potentially could reroute in, which would have a bishop attack, double attack there, and then you have knight g3, and that protects and brings more material over to the queen side. And black might lash out like this, and then you takes, queen takes, rook takes, and then rook a d1, and then it's basically a challenge game. And black may just retreat back there, and then the pawn could just be pushed up the board, and after potentially knight there, you can actually at this point, if you wanted to, kind of a crazy type of move setup, you can actually play e6 here, and it's a pawn sacrifice to kind of just shatter the king side. I don't think I would do it, as some theory has that in it, so I'd probably be more likely to play just keep that right there. Well, you have to be careful because the bishop will just trade off the knight, and then that would happen. So you probably that's a tough one. I may just play that move and then have the pawn sacrifice here, and then maybe bishop there would be playable for. And at this point, if you wanted to, you can potentially double up. You take there, takes, and then if the knight came in here, you do have this. He would take double, ruin your pawn chain, rook, and then potentially you have rook d6 there. You'd probably play that, and then rook d6, trying to do that, and then you actually have bishop here, and the bishop has to come up, and so you get your pawn back. But white has shattered pawns, so the knight probably would come there. I don't know. It'd probably be equal for both sides at this point. Slightly better probably for black. But still, excuse me, let me get a drink here. This is just some of my own analysis, so it may not be as 100%, all accurate, but you know what, you have to sometimes trust yourself. And then knight h, and this is very dangerous, very, very dangerous at this point, because then the rook would be in deep trouble here. So the king has to move, and you have to decide, do you want to take with the rook, or do you want to take with the knight and try to go for like a position like this? And then he has a cheap, kind of like, I call it a cheapo check a little bit. And then if he tries to maybe unwind the position via doing this, he would lose a piece, so you can't do that. So maybe knight there, and then maybe trying like some sort of knight move like that. And I'm not sure if I think this might actually be beneficial. No, that would actually be losing for because the knight's no longer protected. So you'd have to take, and you're threatening actually mate. So so probably, well, this is tough. Probably the king has to come over at this point. Then you have check. you'd almost have a somewhat of a mating threat. So the rook would have to actually sack back itself for the attack. You could play rook takes here. Bishop check. King would have to move. Potentially a pin. So this might actually be lost if that's played there. Yeah, we'll continue the game, but it's just fun sometimes to analyze and take a look at some of the moves. C3. Remember we talked about it's for then a bishop to go back, and also D4. Bishop D7 to attack the bishop. Rook E1. This protects the pawn. Because beforehand, if the knight were to take, of course you see this type of a move here, then back, and then the knight would take, and knight takes, and you have that, and so it's kind of an odd little position. Then queen E1, and then you develop, and you just come out like that. So C, bishop there, and then rook E1 that guards that and prepares to push it up the board, because after takes and then takes here, you actually could potentially play E5 and then really open up the position. Just rip the position open and go for the king. All guns blazing, as I like to say. G6, this gets the bishop fianchettoed. And now, kaboom, here comes D4. Bishop G7. You can develop the knight. An interesting idea is taking here. If takes. Playing bishop takes. Bishop takes, knight takes. Queen takes, rook takes. And then knight takes pawn. And bishop takes, and then takes. And is it beneficial for white or black? You have to always consider this type of position. Like, yeah, if you played bishop there, rook slides over, attacks the pawn. So, and do you play here, then knight takes, bishop takes here, and then you play there, and then you have to retreat your bishop back. So the bishop would retreat back here, and you would pick up a pawn. So it'd be equal pawns, but black would be slightly in a worse position. So probably more likely doubling up rooks there. The king would have to come up. And then you potentially could just take the pawn there, and the bishop would go there. And really interesting position. So 7, knight B, 9. So it's not takes. It's actually knight B D7. And then we have to promote that to the main line. Castle, kingside for black. So now the castle, black's safe. So now you're going to have to play slightly a little bit more positional. You take here, bishop takes, and pawn takes E5, takes, and then knight takes. And then bishop takes E4, knight takes E4, queen takes D1, rook takes D1, knight takes E4. You kind of get into the similar position that we have knight D7, rook fe1 to protect the knight. Kind of a little choppy after. I'm not sure if this is such a well planned out idea. You do have bishop there attacking, so if the knight were to come back here, you could take with check there, and you're challenging the rook, and the rook's going to have to trade. After the rook trades, you control one of the open files, and potentially they could take the other open file, but I'm not sure if that's as good. So bishop f4 now, going after the weak c7 pawn, c6. So now there's an outpost on b6 that the knight can go to. So that's a soft spot. King f1. This prepares so that there's no cheapo e1 double up checks, so the king guards e1. It's also on a light square, so the bishop will no longer ever be able to check it. It's an interesting continuation because the position's heading more towards an endgame, and with the endgame coming, you're wanting your king more centralized. So knight f6 here, bishop g5. And the reason they didn't trade here was because, yeah, the bishop, you could get that, but can you really do anything after this move? Well, actually, that does do a lot. So I think it's what they were looking at as rook e7. Well, then you'd probably want to double up rooks at that point. You could double up rooks here. At this point, I'd want to retreat my bishop that way. So you wouldn't be able to play that because that's losing. Interesting, to say the least. So knight takes d, and then now the rook takes. So now the rook dominates the 7th rank, what we were talking about. And then rook e5 to attack this bishop. Bishop e7. And potentially the idea is we're going to play rook ad1 and then potentially retreat the bishop out somewhere along here and then in there, trying to take advantage of the position. Rook b5, that takes advantage of this pawn there. Bishop a3 is guarding it. White owns the open d file, and soon potentially white could potentially own the open e file, and so white will control the majority of the open files, all of them basically. His rook is proudly sitting on the 7th rank where it attacks b7, and this position seems to be devoid of any weaknesses. Should white be significantly better here? The answer is rather surprising. White doesn't have more than a small plus. In fact, Marcos, a magnificent endgame player, wasn't even able to deny black's basically open up the shield. Wasn't even able to dent black's shell. Sorry, dent black's shell in this position. So bishop f8 here. An important move that strives to remove the defender of b2. c4 was actually played at this point, and then b6, and then c5 to shut down this position. A draw also resorts from this position here. Takes, king takes, b3, a5, rook ad1, A4, rook D, D3, D1 to D3, A takes B, A takes B, rook takes B, what did I miss here? A4, I missed something somewhere. Bishop takes, it takes B3, A5. I think somewhere here oh, I got it. Right here is, I knew I missed something right here. Then king takes, B3, A5, rook A, C1, A5, and then rook, there we go, BD1. Takes, and then rook, instead of pawn takes, rook takes A, then AA6, not A, BA6, AA6, rook takes B, rotates B7, rotates B7, rotates B7, rook A4, C5, rook A5, rook A4, king E8, rook C7, takes C5, rook A7, and then rook C2. And there's really no way to make any priors because the rook's going to get behind here, this rook's going to get there, and it's going to head towards a draw. So C5 was played, and actually this is an equal position, so I have to put an equal sign there. Where is that? Equal position. Rook B5, rook AD1, far more interesting is a rook E1. When one can spend many hours devising into the positional hidden treasures here. Though an analysis of such an endgame which often features both sides fighting to get pigs on the 7th, is always outside of this book's scope. I recommend that endgame enthusiasts focus on lines such as this move here. Let's see, where would he be? Rook E1, and then E6, which is an interesting move continuation from black. C takes B, rook takes A3, bishop takes A3, B takes A3, rook takes B6, and then rook E7. Now one simple but funny position is rook B1 check, king E2, rook B2 check, king E3, rook takes A2, rook takes F, rook E8. Oops, I put the king on the wrong spot. Rook E3, rook takes, and then there, rook F3 is met by rook to F8, and then king D3 is met by rook D8 exclam. So that's a kind of funny. I recall a story about a famous grandmaster that wanted to learn the complete truth about a certain endgame position. He got some friends together and they all hunkered down into the grandmaster's apartment for several days, never leaving or seeing the light of day. That this is kind of a joke, I think, and living on a diet of pizza. And their original and only endgame when the position had been completely deconstructed, rebuilt, and mastered during a deep analysis, alone or with friends of any complex position, is not only highly enjoyable but also excitingly instructive. I thought I recommended stocking up on, he says, real food. It's funny, and avoid bad food. Avoiding bad food. Hold on, I'll do that. If you have a chess teacher, then all the better. You can turn over your analysis to the chess pro and see how close to reality you were, and then have him show you the things you did wrong and help you fix these weak points. Of course, most people can't afford the time for several days of basically study and imagining all the problems that would arise in kind of a family life. You're not able to always get to spend several days or hours working on it. So you have to analyze the position of interesting games every weak point in that game, giving it an hour here, an hour there, and you'll find the time well spent to go over games, analyze it, and because you're not going to be able to all the time, because we have jobs that you have to get to, families and family obligations and all that. So it's just one of those things you have to, when you get an hour here or an hour there, rather than do maybe some other stuff that's not productive, you spend an hour, maybe 30 minutes, 15 minutes on some chess puzzles, or just going over a game, maybe just doing 10 moves if you only have enough time for that, and then coming back and finishing the rest of the game. But just do something to analyze a position and go over it, play it out, learn the ins and outs of it. And endgame is a perfect route for that, because you can actually stop an endgame at certain points and then pick it up later on. It's not like if you enter like a Ruy Lopez, when you have to go through several, maybe 20 different move orders to get it, and you might forget which one you're on. With an endgame position, you can stop and come back to it, and it has certain type of positional understanding as well that you can use in your games. Rook e8 was played here, and so if you're wanting to, we'll go over that in just a moment. Okay, we'll go over it in just a moment. We have to finish this, and then I'll show you kind of a black line that you my teacher showed this to me, that if you're wanting and you're just starting out as a player and you just want a quick line, quick opening to go over, I'll show you one. So rook d8 is played as if white was saying, I'm not doing much on the 7th rank, so let's try the 8th rank at this point. Rook takes, and then king g7. Wisely stepping off the back rank, the rook on the 8th is mostly all of their power is null and void and basically gone, so it's over. b4, this is an important move to hold the pawn, because if you don't have enough defenders, the rook wouldn't be able to come back, because d5 is covered by the c6 pawn. So b4 is the only move. This kind of locks the bishop down, and potentially one of the rooks are going to have to come back, and then a3 maybe can be played, which would free up the bishop. So bishop e7 to attack the rook. This move takes the terror away from checks along the a1 to d8 diagonal. So bishop b2 check, bishop f6, bishop takes, and then king takes, rook a3. This is vital. It's kind of interesting how, if you're looking at this position, this rook is almost trapped, but black has one subtle move that would free the rook up, is a5, so it's not really trapped. It looks trapped, and most players would panic. So black just plays a5. It says, my rook's not trapped. Nice try, friend. A takes b. Rook takes. Let's see. Oops, I did the wrong. It wasn't for this. It was rook d4, and then a takes b, king e5, rook h4, h5, king e2, trying to get the king activated, b6 to undermine the pawn, c takes b6, rook takes b6. They're basically trading down to a draw. There's really no way to for white or black to make any progress here. It'll end up being a draw. Rook b5, rook e4 check, king d6, rook b4 check, king e6, king c4 to protect the pawn, free up the rook to be able to move. f6 is played here. This shuts down and allows the pawn chain to get rolling. They're not going to be able to make much progress here. Check, king d6. There we go. I timed him out. That's funny. So it's okay. not really progress can be made. There's really nothing that black can do. So king d6 holds on to his pawn. Rook f4. King e6. Oops, not king e5. You don't want to do that. That's a mistake. G3. G5 to attack the rook. Rook e4 check. King d6. Rook d4 check. So it's almost coming into a draw. They're kind of just playing around now. F4 takes, G takes, and now the structure is almost similar. So king e6, he goes back. Rook d4. Probably maybe king d6 again. d4. It's going to be a draw. e6, e4, and yeah, it's just perpetual. Nice. Hey, that's congrats. That's always nice. And finally, we're ending our theoretical rook on the set on the 8th rank by offering up an amusing little game. But we're gonna. Well, I promised. I think. Let me hope. I hope the user's still here. Nope. I was going to. There is Jack 8. I don't know how many eights that is, but I was going to show him the French, but I don't know if he's still here. So yeah, I was. Yep. And I don't think he's here right now. So we'll go over a game. And if he is here, I'll stop this game and show him the black opening. He wanted to see a good black opening. I was going to show him the French, a couple French lines that he might be able to play against his opponent, so that he can kind of, if he's starting out as a new player, it's always fun to just do the French. Then you can get the French allows you to move into the middle game without really any difficulties. I know it's kind of a more positional opening, but I'd rather have a positional opening at the beginning of my chess career where I can have a little fun, not get mated early in the game. So that's never fun. This is 2009. So let's see. Now I hope I've spelt Nakamura right. Let's see. I want to make sure I spelled this player right. Got it. Okay. All right. Now. Okay. Perfect. It's not as big as a game. It's like let me see, how many? It's 32 moves. The other one was 50 moves. So this is a smaller one. Okay. So it's Hikaru's black. So we'll get to see what white's idea is. So d6. Oh, he's doing the perk. D4. Bishop e3. Oops, g6. That's what I mean. And then bishop e3. There's like a book on the perk. It's how to play the perk. It's pretty interesting of a book. This is kind of a, I've seen a position similar to this. This is an, excuse me, a very different position to say the least. Naka has basically snipers on both sides of the board, going this way and that way. So the player better be careful, because those bishops can be devastating if unleashed and properly maneuvered. And e5. Okay, c5, trying to undermine it. Bishop e4. He's trying to trade off one of the snipers. Queen d. Bishop takes, queen takes. So he just replaced the queen, so the queen's now somewhat imitating a bishop at the present moment. D takes c. D takes e5. And then queen to d5 here. Trying to trade down. This is kind of more of a trading down position. If the queens did trade, oh, the queens did trade down. Interesting. I was going to say, now if black tried taking here, he could actually take back with a knight now, and this pawn's still protected. Nakamura has a majority on the 4 versus 2 on the king side, so I kind of favor Hikaru at this present moment. Not because it's Hikaru, but because of his position is really good. Now this comes under fire. Knight b6. Knight takes b6. C takes. This is getting interesting. What book is this? It's How to Reassess Your Chess, 4th edition. Knight f6. And then white castle. I'm saying that I'm favoring, now I like white. This pawn here, I know it's potentially a weakness, but man, black's got to be very concerned with a pawn like b5. Yikes. Knight g4. And it's kind of in Hikaru's style that he doesn't react to his opponent's problems. Like some players would play rook b8 to say, oh no, I got to stop this pawn. But Hikaru noticed that the pawn, even if it goes b7, the rook can go to b8. And at this point, he got a knight development in. He's attacking the bishop, so Hikaru is pushing the position. And the bishop, one of the rooks is going to have to slide over to protect the bishop. And then it would come down to a bishop versus knight endgame. And this position at the present moment is more beneficial for black, because if it came to a bishop versus knight endgame with black having the bishop, there's pawns on both sides of the board, which magnifies the bishop's influence and power, and the knight can only travel basically 3 squares at a time, up, and the bishop can go from one side of the board to the other almost. So you always got to look at when you have a position similar to Hikaru's with white having a b6 pawn, always ask yourself, what type of endgame do I want to possess? And then you may have to do this move, like an h4 move or g4 move for black, and then trade off and then go towards a bishop versus knight endgame. But you have to know what you're doing when you're doing that, because that's a huge imbalance. That's a really big imbalance. And so knight a7. Hold on, what am I missing here? Oh, 16. B7, and then rook to b8, of course. Bishop b. This threatens, by the way, Hikaru can't play this. If he did that, he'd fall to the old classic mate. So the bishop is, the pawn's immune for a moment. If black castles, then the rook would actually be able to infiltrate onto d7, and then guarding the pawn, and then next move would be bishop a7, and this rook would come under severe pressure at that point. So we're in move 18, f6. That protects the pawn. Also, it allows the king. Now the king could just go to f7 if need be, and out of harm's way. Rook d8. And you don't want to take. Whatever you do, you want to play king f7. Taking loses on the spot, because then you take here, you take there, and this blocks the ability of the rook to guard the 8th rank. And so if king takes, then you get a queen, and it's basically game, set, and match at this point, because then you're involving the rook, the king comes up, and at this point you're involving a check. So you'd have to be a little cautious here. Maybe not rook d1. Maybe queen b1 first, and then potentially rook d1 maybe. Something similar to that would be a good, interesting flow. So so f1. Oops, I have to promote this. This is actually the moves that was played. That were played. Rook d7. Now the idea is bishop a7. So bishop h6. Now Hikaru is ready to, if bishop a7, he's ready to meet the bishop a7 with bishop takes f4 check. g3 was played. It's interesting to see if this was played here. You can meet that with check. We have to move. This is poison because of knight. Well, I guess it's not really poison because it does guard there. I just play b1. Just get off of everything, and I'm thinking knight f2 potentially. Well, wait a second. Knight f2 is a blunder because then the bishop comes back and takes. Boy, this is a tough one. Maybe king e6 is probably the continuation that you'd have to go down. And then you don't want to trade. You're dragging the king out. Boy, this is a tough one. You take there. I guess maybe you could take there. You're up a whole piece. So maybe king e6 is not. E6 is right. There you would probably have to move the rook at this point. Take the open file. And really there's no way to queen well, I guess you could queen it, and you'd have to go down, and you'd be down in exchange. It's interesting. I know I'm always looking at these lines. They're pretty interesting continuations. There must be a ripple in it that White didn't like. That's why he kind of didn't play it. But I think g3 might have been a slight inaccuracy. It doesn't say it on here, but I really don't like it. King B1. 95. Oops. I need to go knight e5. Knight takes e5. Pawn takes e5. Bishop a7. Now he's got to win an exchange. e6. Rook hd1. f3. Rook c7. He's going to try to get doubled rooks. e4. Rook dd7. Now this is a powerhouse here, he8. And then a3. Bishop g5 to guard the pawn. h4. White has been trying to cause hectic on the 7th rank while also doing his best to make in-routes into the 8th so that his b pawn can promote. On the other hand, black has held fast and also begins his own bid to the race with e4. And then f3 to the 8th rank and promoting them. The goals are clear, though acquiring them is going to be based on pure tactics at this point. This example is raw entertainment with the rub that it helps solid if you have a solid position and the understanding that you're getting from heavy pieces. Basically, let me reread that. This example is raw entertainment with the rub that it helps solidify the understanding that getting one heavy piece and pawns, since one heavy piece, get one heavy pieces, one of the heavy pieces, sorry, and the pawns, since if they get to the let me see, hold on. Oops, I got the wrong row. Get to the 8th rank, they turn into heavy pieces. To those ranks is a serious business. So the 7th and 8th rank are serious businesses when you could double up 1 or 2 rooks there. Sorry about that. I had the wrong line. I was rereading the same line again. So Hikaru plays e3 here, exclam. This is actually, I think, the winning move, if I'm not mistaken. Since black's goal is to get his pawns to the 8th, our first rank, why waste a crucial tempo moving the bishop? In fact, in this position of this nature time, rushing towards your goal with as much speed as possible is often more important than material. Let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, here's an example of the difference. Here's an example of the difference one single tempo makes. Bishop back here, bishop h6. This is actually a double. This is a blunder here. Seems logical, but it gives white a critical tempo, which he uses to get his king off the back rank. King a2. Then e3. Rook takes e7. And this is a exclam check. Rook takes. Hold on, let me see. where's the other continuation? Here we go. Rook takes e7. Bishop takes b8. Pawn f2. Rook takes. King takes. Bishop d6 check. King e6. b8 equals queen. Rook f1 equals queen, with probably a draw here. And then there's also one other line after this. If bishop takes here, this is actually a mistake by white. It's too slow. It actually gives black the tempo back. He could take here. Rook takes e. King f5. Rook c8. Rook takes b7. Rook takes b7. King g4. Leads to a completely insane position. There's more possibilities of rook takes h7, rook e2, rook e7, wait a second. I think I got to the wrong point. Sorry about this, team. Sorry, I had the wrong position. Takes. Now this is the. Sorry, this isn't the right position. It's this one right here. Sorry about that. I knew there was something awry at this point. Here. King there. Right there. Right here. King there. Takes. F2. Oops, let me see. Not F2. E2. Rook E7. There we go. Now we're on the right track. F2. Rook takes E2 equals check. Rook E6. Queen F7. Rook C6. King takes G. Rook B1. King B1. King takes H4. And then rook takes G6. And with a completely strange game, this is major kind of candidate for Larsson's famous for this type of stuff. Yeah. So Larsson was famous for this long analysis. It was wrong. Long analysis, wrong analysis. That was his statement. I'm sure improvements are lurking behind every corner, so happy hunting on that one. That's what Jeremy Silma said. If you're wanting to go over those lines, you can. Bishop takes here. F2. Bishop A7. F1 equals queen. King A2 check. And then E2. And it's actually over at this point. If B8 equals queen, rook takes B8, bishop takes B8, and then hello number 2 queen. And they are two generals. Man, you got it. This is like, hello. Each side claims a rank. You don't see this every day. White has doubled rooks on the 7th, while black has double queens on the 8th. The queens appear to have a bit more power to them. And we're going to do, we'll summarize in this section here. If you want your rooks to be effective, they need an open file, 1. 2. Without an open file, a bishop or knight might easily outperform the rook, leaving it sitting passively behind its pawns while it sadly dreams of an unrealized positional advantage. 2. A half-open file is often used to basically express more pressure against weak pawns. So if there's a half-open file, you potentially can use it to take scope on the weak pawns. A file is a very valuable commodity because it's the road that your rook travels on in order to infiltrate into the enemy position. Okay, that's why such files are often fought over, with both sides trying hard to make it their own. And this is 5. The importance of a half-open files, creating them, fighting for them, to dominate them, infiltrating into the enemy position on them, and using them to infiltrate or pressure weak enemy pawns should be clear by now, but equally important is the enormous power of a rook on the 7th or 8th rank. 8th rank entices are usually of a tactical or attacking nature. So if you have a rook on the 8th, it's usually a tactical or attacking nature. And back rank mates are part of every beginner's tactical training. And this is another one. A rook on the 8th can lead to all sorts of fun. However, controlling the 7th rank is particularly a prize, not because it's not only an annoyance, the enemy king annoying the enemy king, but it also targets all the enemy pawns that have yet to venture forward. Okay, let's see, what time do we have here? How are we doing? Yeah, we'll stop here because we're diving into another section, and the section is material. This is the chapter, material, and then the subsection is fear of giving up or taking material. And so we'll stop right here, and we've already summarized what we went over, so we don't need to do a summary. So I'm going to, do you have any questions before I log off on what we priorly went over? Rook on the 7th? Okay. Perfect. Oh, okay. I wanted to thank you all for logging on, participating. Remember, take what you know here and apply it and be willing to do something with it. So use it on the board, okay? So that's what Bruce Lee is saying. Take all the knowledge that you get and use it. And that's, you know what, that's why choices and the choice to receive the Lord Jesus, Lord and Savior of your lives, as important as getting a rook to the 7th or the 8th. And so that's why the Team Chess Cruncher motto is important. That's why we study what we study. Because what do? We sit, we hang up our coats, we hang up our hats, we sit down and study when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening. Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. We'll keep pushing forward, onward and upward. 2 thumbs up. Remember what Hannibal Smith said. It is true. Even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. And we've learned that from Jeremy Silman's How to Reassess Your Chess, 4th editions. So keep that in mind. There is no randomness. Okay, 2 thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed, team, and I will see you tomorrow. We're going to be going over our next chapter, having fun, learning, improving the Team Chess Cruncher way. Bye-bye, team. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.